All right, welcome everyone. This is Math 347, Mathematical Statistics. Hopefully you're all here in the right place. I'm Abra Brisbane. You're welcome to call me Dr. Abra or Dr. Brisbane. And so just as a reminder, today's our lab. So we're in this room, and then tomorrow for our sort of regular class period, we'll be downstairs in Hibberd 228. So as far as sort of course procedures go, the syllabus is up on Canvas. So I figure you can take a look at that on your own time. Some of the things that you will probably want to know getting started are my office hours or drop-in hours this semester are going to be online. Like they were last year. I felt like that worked really well to be able to have people log into drop-in hours from wherever you were. You didn't have to come to campus. And it meant I didn't need to come to campus to have an office hour on Saturday. So follow the link from Canvas, and those will be on Mondays and Wednesdays from 2 to 2:50, and Fridays from 12 to 12:50, and Saturdays from 1 to 2. So I tried to space them out at a few different times throughout the semester, or throughout the week, so that if one of these times doesn't work for you, hopefully another time will. So if you want help during one of these times, just drop into the Zoom link. If none of these times works for you and you want to set up a time for another meeting, send me an email and we can schedule another time. Also, we'll be doing this class as sort of a hybrid class, similar to those of you who were in Math 346 with me last semester. I encourage you, if you are feeling good, feeling healthy, and haven't had any contact with someone who's been diagnosed with COVID, to come into class in person. But there is an option to attend online. So I'm streaming right now on Zoom, and this is being recorded, so you can watch the recordings afterwards. And I'm going to start sharing my screen now. So if that's something that you want to do, you can get to that through the link on Canvas called Online Class Sessions. The one caveat here is that I'm doing this hybrid class to make things easier for you, not to make things harder on the other professors in the math department. So please don't use the fact that your statistics class is allowing you to attend online to try to encourage your other professors to offer their classes online, because that's something that I can do because of the content of this class and because I have experience teaching courses online. It's not something that all of your professors are necessarily comfortable with. Sound good? All right. Also on Canvas is your first homework assignment. Homework this semester is going to be split up between web work assignments that will get you immediate feedback, and you'll get unlimited attempts at those, and written assignments where you're going to be showing your work or explaining or proving something. So that will let me sort of see both sides of your understanding, and it will let you get some immediate feedback and get some practice with explaining your reasoning and getting feedback on that. So those are due on Monday, September 13th, because we don't have class on Monday the 6th. And homework 0 is entirely covering review material from Math 346. So we'll be doing review tomorrow and Wednesday of next week. But go ahead and get started on the homework right away. If you have your notes from Math 346, you should be able to get a good start on that even before we do those days. Questions about any of those things? All right, so let's dive right into our lab. So you can, in Canvas, click on the Intro to R lab. And that will let you download the R Markdown document for today's activity.
Do we use personal laptops?
Yes. If you'd rather do this on your laptop, if you don't have R installed, you can do that by going to, let me bring up a page that I can type on. r-project.org to download R. And you'll also probably want to install RStudio. And both of those are free, so I would encourage you to install it on your laptop so you can work on the labs from off campus. All right. So if you go ahead and open the Intro to R lab, you can do that in RStudio. And that should look like this. People have been able to open that successfully. Cool. I know the people in 346 last semester are somewhat familiar with R. Can I get a show of hands for people who have never worked with R before? Cool, awesome. So let's do a little tour. So this is RStudio, which is a graphical interface for R. It just makes things a little bit easier to work with. Up in the upper left-hand corner is where your R Markdown document is. So this is where you'll open files that contain code. And this is in particular an R Markdown document. So it contains regions in gray, which will contain code, and then regions in white that contain text. So you can use that to explain your analysis or answer questions related to the code that you've written. Down in the lower left-hand corner is what's called the console. So this is where the sort of actual calculations are done. So you can type code down in the console. So for example, I could type 2 + 2 and press enter, and it tells me that the answer is 4. I sometimes do this for sort of temporary code if I'm testing stuff out, but the code that you type into the console doesn't get saved anywhere. So I recommend doing most of your work up in an R Markdown document or an R script. Over on the right-hand side, we have various tabs to make things easier. Right now, we have the environment showing in the upper right-hand corner. So that's going to store any variables that we create. So for example, if I take this first code box with x = 2 + 2 and press the green arrow to run that code, now I'm getting an error. No package called knitter, so we need to install that. Install.packages knitter.
If we got an error code too, should we type it in?
Yeah, go ahead and type install.packages, parentheses, quote, KNITR. Let me see about increasing the font size here. So this is what I typed in order to install the package that we need in order to what's called knit the document, which is going to be able to turn it into a Word document. All right, so now we hit the green arrow. We can see that the variable X now appears in the global environment. So this is telling us that we now have the variable X and what its value is that we can refer to in other code. Down in the lower right-hand corner, probably the main one that you'll use for now is the help tab. So if you want to find more information about a function, for example, you want to know how this install.packages function works, you can type it in the search bar and it will tell you about that function. You can also get to most of this information just as easily through Google. If you type the letter R and then the name of the function or the name of what you're trying to do, then you'll get usually the same information as well as other examples. So that works as well. Questions about this brief introduction to RStudio? All right, so the intro to R, our Markdown document, is set up to sort of guide you through the first steps of working with data in R. So please give that a try and let me know when you have questions. And then we'll talk about this at the end of our lab. Let me know when you have questions.
No, I really like to work with like other people or just by
Yes.
yourself. There.
If you would like to work with a partner on this, go ahead. Just make sure that both people's names end up on the lab.
I'll be-
Hey, Vivian, are you able to hear me? Cool. Yeah, so go ahead and open up the intro to R.rmd file that's on Canvas. So it's right here. And start working your way through it. So writing code in the gray code cells to answer the questions in the document. And let me know when you have questions. Make sense? Cool. So click on the green arrow in the upper right-hand corner of the box. You could, but you can also just click that arrow. So then it evaluates it right there. Oh.
Hold on, so no, I'm not.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
It'll take a little bit of time because it needs to reinstall all of those.
Okay.
But hopefully, once it's done, it'll stay updated so that next time you use this computer, you can hopefully that.
One more question too. What is the difference between R and R Studio?
Good question. R is the underlying programming language.
Okay.
RStudio is this specific way that it's being displayed.
Okay, so we go on our laptop too.
Yes,
Okay.
You definitely need R.
Okay.
If you want to be able to work with it and have sort of this nice format,
Mhm.
I recommend having RStudio.
Okay.
But it is possible to use R without RStudio, not the other way around.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I got that too.
That's it.
So you're going to want to do install that packages, parentheses, quote, dplyr.
Up here. Up here.
No, you always install packages in the console, so click on the console button. And then in quotation marks, dplyr. Yeah. Welcome.
I should look back to which that thing, but it's supposed to be the error when you use this text. I saw that.
Yes.
So I checked that out.
Oh,
What were you helping her with the package?
Okay.
She was getting an error saying that some packages needed updated.
Oh, okay, okay, I put in the.
Oh, I mean, that's the package. Oh, right. There's now a question about getting points and when you're trying to meet it. Yep, so,
I think so.
I'm sorry about that, everyone. So when you're doing the knitting for the first time, if you're getting an error message saying that it's not finding a particular function, that's happening because I wasn't thinking about the order of things. And you need to install and load the packages that those are in. So just scroll down. We need to, we're going to be using functions from the dplyr and ggformula packages. So to load dplyr, we'll use library dplyr. But before you do that for the first time, you need to first install it. Same way we did with knitr. So just install.packages and then the name of the package you're trying to install in quotes. And same thing with the GG formula package. And then you're going to want to load that package using the library function. So Vivian asks, do I have to copy the code in the gray boxes into the answer? Great question. So when you're answering a question in the lab that involves some explanation, for example, where is it? What happens when you change the lowercase x to a capital X? Then you should go ahead and type your answer in the white portion of the R Markdown document. But if all you're doing is saying, what is the answer to x plus 3, you actually don't need to type that answer in, because if it evaluates when you click the green arrow and shows up down here, then when you knit the document, both the code and the answer will be included in the Word document that you create. Does that answer questions about the error message when you're trying to knit?
Give me an error when I'm trying to do the package for the.
You don't have to go line, that's just DP.
Oh, thank you. If that's wrong, I have to delete that. Or I just continue.
You can just continue. And in fact, you can use the arrow up key to repeat the previous command. And
Okay,
then
cool. And then
just
change
arrow
the-
over. Yep.
What was the two packages?
DPLYR. And GG formula. And actually, you don't want the install that packages command to be in the R Markdown document. Because the R Markdown document is meant to be this like interactive document that it like runs the code every time you want to create a new Word document. And so having installed that packages in there can create problems when you try to knit the document. You can have the library parentheses be applied in there, and it is already in there. You can go ahead and click yes. It'll take a little bit of time to install those, but hopefully then you won't need to do that for the next lab.
Still not working.
Still not working?
Yeah, for me.
So tell you what, go ahead and wait to knit the document until we get done with problem 3. I think having knit the document too early is causing problems. Once you get down to problem 3, then you will have loaded the package.
You want the it's not. You want to get a group?
DPLY.
Okay. Okay. Switch over there.
DPLYR. Nope, there's only one line. Yep, there we go.
Okay.
It's going.
Okay. Let's see if I get an
Okay. I mean, yeah, that's, like, that's just a comment to explain what that line of code is doing.
Remember that?
Not trying to do anything too tricky. How's it going? Yeah, let's see. Something that's useful to know is that this thing that you started controls the name of that column. And it doesn't have to match the function that you use.
Okay, so you can see that.
Yeah.
Okay.
How's it going? If you're working by yourself, it can just be your name. That's just if you have a pair of people and you want to come up with a name. How's it going? You can see the results below. I'm confused about why it's taking so long.
Yeah, I don't know.
Let's stop. That's 34. And like, you can see the results over here.
Mhm.
There's something like earlier on that didn't quite finish running.
I can see.
Is it console? Scroll down, is it? Scroll down to the bottom. Is it giving you, it's not giving you a carrot, so it's not, it thinks it's not ready for the next one. Why did it stop button on the console there? Huh. Maybe try saving it on a phone, I think it just restarted it. And then, yeah, just close out our studio. Oh, don't save.
Okay.
Oh, did you have our studio open?
Might have had it
Twice?
open twice.
Looks like it's open or, you know, far open. or whatever.
Yeah, far.
Okay. Maybe we just close that, like, usually that shouldn't be a problem, but. Hmm. restart our studio one more time, please?
But we have to,
You don't need a project. That's it. Can be helpful for organizing your work. Get into the final project.
eventually, Carter.
Yeah, maybe. No. Mhm. Try just typing something in the console. Yeah, 2+2 maybe. Okay, so that is processing things. Okay, that works now. Okay,
Thank you.
welcome. How's it going?
Okay, so I need the vector. Is that how you use the number sign?
So the number sign lets you put in comments.
Or
But in order to create the vector and like call it favorites, you would put favorites on the left-hand side of the equal sign in place of where the X is.
oh, okay. So then when I run, is this what's messing up the command?
Essentially, in the other
The
one.
square?
So what's messing up the command is that you have the 3 times X on the same line as the backticks.
Okay, so that's me down.
It needs to be inside of a code cell, which is demarcated by those backticks.
Okay,
So if you just delete the 3 times X or just move it into like create a new line above that.
yeah.
There you go.
Thank you.
How else could you compute the squares if you didn't already know that 3 was what was in there?
Could I do X times X?
X times X or X caret 2? Or actually favorites times favorites or favorites caret 2.
Okay.
How's it going? A little bit.
Yeah.
You could make your 2.
Same number.
So you only want one set of parentheses to make a vector, but it certainly could be like 7, 7, 1. Yep, so that works if you, so that way if you want to find the squares of a whole bunch of things, you can do them all in one, at one time by making one vector contain them all and squaring that whole vector. How's it going? I would actually use favorites then on line 73. Because it's a vector, it actually,
Like,
even
colon
if it actually just goes through bracket 2, it will
So-
matrix that you can use commas to separate the row and column. There you go. Okay. How's it going?
I'm trying to back it off.
I can do that online today now.
So.
As part of the box plots.
Oh, that's like over the comma.
You can actually just do factor parentheses month
Oh.
in place of where you have month. Nice. How's it going? Are you actually like running the code cell or something going to? Oh, you should be doing that. Vivian, yes, that looks good for taking those 4 numbers and storing them in favorites. Anything else I can help with at the moment? All right, carry on. Anything I can help with?
No, we're not practice the first column, we tried practice the one
Right, exactly. Favorites is a vector. So we want to refer to it similarly to how we did X up above rather than A. No, so it's still favorites, but you see how when we were referring to elements 2 through 5 of X, we didn't have a comma. So it would just be 2 without the comma. The colon is for if you wanted elements 2, 3, 4, 5. It's elements 2 through 5. Oh, that's what the colon gives you. There you go.
Why? I'm sure I said this. Or and then do why. Just trying to know.
Any questions? It is because you have a single equal sign stores something in the variables, a double equal sign
Yeah, I
has
feel
two
like.
other variables.
Oh, why, but no, we're not switching. Right.
Yes, so when you use a
I guess
single
that works.
sign,
We just have to-
it stores the result in that variable. In order to test whether something is equal to something else, you need to merge the signs. Uh, To submit the full route,
No, yeah.
oh, to knit. Up there. Yeah, it's still giving you the error message because you haven't loaded all the libraries that you're gonna need. So don't worry about that. You can read it at the end.
Okay.
Any questions?
Not yet.
All
I'm
right,
sure I will.
there you go. Any questions?
Just a little thing. The back to this one.
Mhm.
So your resume is there's this two like one. Like number.
Mhm.
That's how it's sort of why this is the time so like this.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yep.
But it needs the first find this first before it knows to then.
Um,
If we were just
you
do,
could just have line 93 by itself.
we tried that, but it wasn't working. Well,
It works.
it works, it just doesn't show you.
It stores Y right
Oh,
there.
okay, so
It just doesn't display it.
doesn't have to. In the console.
Yep.
Thanks. Cool.
That is fine. What this is telling you is that the IR package
Like that's what it
contains
is. Yeah.
functions with these
Yeah.
names that
Definitely, that's
are
what it is.
also in other packages.
So it's just gonna, yeah. it's gonna-
So-
I don't know, I guess.
Right. So if you were planning on using one of these, you want to be careful, like which version. you
Yeah,
want.
oh, it's such a.
Um,
That's.
Okay.
We're into there's better things, there's comments, but it's okay. Just to put it as that, yeah.
So you should be able to tell which one that is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, number 6. Any questions? Yeah, you're on the right track. The count here was, it was just in that column, so that's arbitrary. All that average. And then what do you want to do? You also need to put it somewhere. So 117, you started wrong. And the filter function is actually if you want to take a subset of rows.
Okay.
So if you want all the rows, then you can just leave that out. If you wanted to take a subset of rows with petal length greater than 5 or whatever. You could do that. So I'm hoping to discuss the lab at the end of class. But I think most people are gonna be more time to finish this. So can you just show me, what you had?
Want to see the RStudio file or just the highlights?
Either way is fine. Here's your starting favorites. Yep, you use double asterisk or bracket.
Oh, since that's our.
Yeah, this is a conference.
Yeah, let's do it.
I choose the first one. So the second one. So these aren't unique.
No, that's all that we wanted for here. Personally, I think that doing this using dplyr is a little bit easier to interpret. Than saying that.
Yeah.
It's good.
Oh, did you? I think. Look, no, it's
I think there was a question about the price. Here it is. Species. Ozone.
Any questions? All right.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Any questions? All right.
I'm not the speaker, Jeremy.
Any questions?
I might see it.
Alright.
Like,
Yeah, so let's talk through what this is doing. So we're starting with Iris, the data set.
Yeah.
And then the filter function is taking a subset of rows. So in this case, we're taking a subset of rows that have sequence
Right.
6.9. And then we're grouping by species. And then we're doing the summary, which in this case is just taking a number of rows of each species. So in column 2A, are we taking any subsets of rows? Okay, so we don't need the filter though. Do we want to be grouping by anything? Read the second half of that sentence again. Yep, so go ahead and write it back.
We're on it. It's not title, it's species.
I would go ahead and include the iris, percent greater than percent. About that. Okay. So now we want to do the mean code. So we do that using the overall function summarize.
Oh, I think I need it.
And inside the parentheses, then we'll want to use a function to take the mean. Yep. And inside the parentheses of that, you're going to want to put the name of the thing you want to take the mean of. Yep. Optionally, you can put something before the mean, like variable name equals, and that will control the name of that column in the output. But you don't have to put that in, and it doesn't have to be the word mean. It could be average, it could be kettle lengths, it could be my favorite number is. Yep, inside the parentheses of summarize. Mean equals. Yep. So now I would just go ahead and click the. There you go. So that column is called mean because that's what you put on the left hand side. No, standard deviation is a sort of variance. Or you could use the standard deviation function, which is just SD.
Okay, so that's
Nope.
I just said that, but it didn't work, so,
Oh, never mind.
I was thinking.
okay, yeah, all right. Oh, they had. Oh, you just calculate it.
Questions?
Well, I don't think this.
You're on the right track.
I think I was
Yeah. So filter is actually taking a subset of rows, which we don't need to do here. We just want all the irises.
Yeah.
But we do want separate means for each of the iris. Yep. And then for
So I think this is the
196,
I think it's.
you actually want means, parentheses.
Yeah, I just, I understand. I
So you just
understand.
putting all of those other than greater than, because that was the same thing.
Oh,
Oh, you said it was
That's
No,
just a example.
we don't need another percent variable percent because we're not taking it into another function. But
Okay, so talking through what are we doing?
open
So we're
parentheses.
seeing
There you go.
People,
If you wanted, before the main title line, you could have variable equals to change the name of that column. Inside the parentheses or something. Yeah.
So do we need these two sections?
Variable mean average or.
Oh, okay.
No,
So
sorry.
we're gonna take-
You wanted to call it mean
Just need to have
mean
these here.
equals mean parentheses.
So I'm trying to find the
Not the word variable.
Oh, I get parentheses now.
Just mean equals. Yeah.
Yeah, so now we're sort of that's.
So mean equals. So this one is, yeah. So the one on the left-hand side of the equal sign is the variable.
Yeah.
It's now going to
So-
be the name of that
So
column.
it's the same thing as that,
Right-hand
so
side
just
equals
so this one.
parentheses.
This one. Yeah, this is kind of the set of.
You're welcome.
Receive this true or false and out, such what that is.
How's it going?
So. We have.
I think I fixed it.
Awesome.
Let me just check if it's right now.
So like, what, inside the brackets is like the true or false question, and then outside the brackets is like what's actually outputted.
Yeah.
We're kind of, yeah, so we're first looking at species, then some subset of that would be, we're testing with people like. They're just creating this, instead of our last one, doing true or false, this test, it is true or false, want that true, now, but
Great. Then it outputs the species for the ones that are true.
is that right?
Yeah, that works good. Ah. How to do it. How's it going?
Great.
We did not remove
We're just getting.
the right code in that itself. What you can use up above to load the zip file package. Yeah. We're an hour in, so if anyone needs to take a stretch break, go for it. Yeah. Cool. Looks good. That's what you did for the We want to type the results from Everest.
Oh, okay.
So the filter function is actually taking a subset of rows. Do you want to be doing that for this problem? Right. Yeah, so you don't need to use filter here.
And then what I just take the sum of each and then divide by number. Since that is a mean.
Here.
There
Did
is.
I
a-
not put that in there? Sorry about
Maybe I'm
that.
just missing it. I'm in some.
I didn't put it
I
in there.
don't.
That is
Okay.
my mistake. There is a mean function.
Okay. Is it just me?
It's just,
Okay.
yep.
So when I put that, that'll go my next row.
Yes.
Somewhere.
There's also a standard deviation formula. I mean, method.
Yes, the SD is in that list, but I left out the mean. I will make a note of that to fix for next semester. So what you've got, the mean of petal length is sort of on the right track. But I'd like you to try using the dplyr structure. Using the get the from the 90% gradient percent. Correct.
Yeah, so we're not gonna filter that.
And one more. You're very close. You don't need those one slash two. Nope. You're welcome.
I'm using for only for that. People in the this is called.
You've got it exactly correct. The only thing you're missing is the height on the end of line 190.
That's not it. That's.
And probably on line 199, I probably call it something more informative than count.
Oh, wait, we're at Doris.
I probably call it like.
We only want- oh, no.
Nice.
Thank you.
This, this is not, this is, this is a good question.
Show me your code when you created the is big column.
Okay.
Aha.
So,
Um,
I have a question.
the issue is on line 206.
You're asking about the pedaling.
You
With
are
this
not
data frame,
storing
what
the
is this
new
text
version
file?
of the data
This
frame
one, like,
back in the iris.
Or.
So you created the column and you're displaying it, but you're not storing it back in the data frame to where you can use it again. You actually want the name of the data frame and then a blackboard arrow or an equal sign.
I.
We're calling Iris.
Yeah.
You want that on line 206. You want it before you even mutate. There you go. Can you show me the rest of that graph? Expecting all of the supposed to be false and some of the rest of them are false. Let's see. Can I see your is big, definition? Pedal length in inches is greater than 1.5, which is the new variable that you created in the previous. You can actually just select the variable. Yep.
Would this affect any of
No, I think that's the only. The pedal length in inches. That's more like what I was expecting. Cool. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I really want to do the.
And then once that's installed, how will you load it? Yes, and that I would probably do in the.
Oh.
Anything like that with the link?
We're short on TC.
And we're still on string false values like a new column or something. So you just kind of, it's like,
Yep, so you can use mutate and have a new variable name equals, and then a statement that creates the trues and falses, just like you did back in Code 1.
okay. And then I'm just like with it.
Yep.
Okay.
the same. That's it.
So,
What is that?
yeah, so the iris and then the leftward pointing arrow is storing the results of what comes after it back in the data frame called iris.
Okay.
So that will let you use that new variable, new column to create later on. Nope, you could, but it's not necessary.
So, so this is one.
So you're on the right track. You actually want the name of the new column, the is big, to be inside the mutate function.
So
So it's that.
There's that. You don't need the is big equals mutate. That's the one.
Oh, okay. So it's just straight up, just big.
Nope, just mutate parentheses.
Oh, yeah, yeah. pretty cool. And
Yeah.
then we need this to kind of keep the same.
Yep.
Or this is, I'm sorry.
DYR commands usually start with the data frame being typed into the function.
so we have.
Right. And it doesn't display it. To display it, you could do head parentheses iris, or you could double click on iris over in the global environment.
Okay.
Show you what's in that.
Since you just did the GD formula earlier.
I would do the library GG formula. So that way, when you knit the document, it knows to load the GG formula package. Any questions?
No.
Yeah, that looks
Okay,
good.
no. Okay.
Details section.
Okay, I just was like. I just got confused. But this feels kind of just raw.
It's just meant to make sure that you actually did look at the documentation for the data set. It's not meant to be tricky. Any questions?
Think for once, no.
Oh, yeah. that would be-
That's
Yeah, so why are the colors showing up differently in that graph than the one? So petal length is a quantitative variable,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's easy to categorize. Any questions? So first I would fix line 291.
I just got it.
Yeah. And then up above, when we were using deplaner, how did we take a subset of rows? Yes, but there's another way that we used in column 2. Subset of rows with simple length gradients or something. Yeah. Mhm. All right, 2A. So to do problem 2A, I would use the example that's up above it. So this filter function is taking a subset of rows. In this case, it was the subset of rows with sepal length greater than 6.9. Is that something that we want to do for problem 2A?
Oh, I forgot to do that.
Right, so we don't need the filter function. But we do want to compute the mean separately for each species of iris. So which of these functions is going to allow us to do that? Right, so we can start with taking the data frame iris and piping it into group by. And then we want to compute the mean. Up here, we were computing the count or the number of rows. So we're still going to wrap that in the summarize function. And then the function that we want to use to do the summary will be mean. And we want the mean of petal length. And then optionally, before we take the mean of petal length, so right here inside the parentheses for summarize, we can put in a variable name to name the column of the output. So for example, we could call this average equals mean of petal length. Oops, I didn't load dplyr. So then whatever we put here on the left-hand side of the equal sign is what goes here as the label of that column. And that doesn't have to have anything to do with mean. You could call it my numbers if you wanted. Cool, you're welcome. Good good question. The percent greater than percent is what pipes the previous thing into the next function. So here I'm doing problem 2C. I'm going to take the iris data frame and put that into the mutate function. That is more work than you need to do.
I figured it was, but I figured there would be less time wasted just trying to find the function that I don't know how to find.
So I see that in part B, you're not using dplyr. And the way that you did it works, but can you try it using dplyr? So the percent greater than percent is part of dplyr, and so is summarize.
Oh, okay, okay. So you want to check this part or this part? This one.
Try looking back at how you took the mean of
You.
Right. What data set do you want to be using? Right. Yeah, that takes the air quality data set and types it into the summarize function. And then 260, you're going to want summarize.
Yeah.
Right, because now it knows which data set you're talking about, we're going to type it in. Makes sense.
It explains what that's.
And then what some of you are trying to do. So the nice thing about dplyr is you can just refer to the columns by their names. Mean parentheses.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. Oh, because this one is count. Would that be?
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Cool. So then in part C, it's gonna be almost the same code, but with O's on instead.
Okay. So,
And then you're gonna wanna look at the documentation for the mean function. Find an argument that will let you ignore missing data.
yes. Search me, how do I find it?
I think you will find it.
Okay.
Any questions?
No, I just wanted to say,
So I can use the help documentation over here, and you can use that search bar and search for the mean function, or you can use Google and R mean. And then look in that list of arguments, there's something that will let you ignore missing data. I mean, what?
Like, what would I put in? Ignore it,
What's the function that you're looking at? So, all right, so we have about 20 minutes left. Let's talk about some of these questions that people were asking questions about and make sure that we're all on the same page with them. So if we come back to problem 1, you created your favorites vector. And then to select, first let's do this. First, let's compute the squares of each person's favorite number. Can someone tell me one way that they found to compute the square? Maria?
favorites times favorites.
Excellent. Sam, did you find something else?
Carrot too.
Excellent. Anything else? All right. These are the two main ways, I would say. They both get us the same results. Then if we want to select the second number in favorites, the way we do this depends slightly on whether we're working with a vector, which is what X was up here, or whether we're working with a matrix like A was here. So here, because favorites is a vector, it's just one-dimensional. We can just use square bracket 2, and there's no comma there because there's no distinction between rows and columns. So here we would have y equals favorite square bracket 2. If it were a matrix, then we would use a comma to distinguish which rows we wanted and which columns we wanted. And if we wanted multiple entries in a row, then we could use the colon to say that. So here this x2:5 is saying I want elements 2, 3, 4, and 5. So all the elements between 2 and 5. All right. Coming down to summarize. Seems like most people got this on problem 2A. Nice job. Something that I wanted to clarify here was that when you're using the summarize function, the thing that goes on the left-hand side of this equal sign is just controlling the name of the column in the output that we get. So you could call this mean, you could call it average, you could call it zebra, whatever you want that's going to help remind you what this column is. It doesn't have to match the name of the function that you're using to do the summary. All right. Then another thing that a bunch of people asked questions about was this problem 2C. So we want to create a new column called isBig that contains the word true or the logical value true if the petal length in inches is greater than 1.5 and false otherwise. So this is sort of combining the ideas from our previous example where we created petal length in inches with the examples that we had from problem 1 when you were doing vectors of trues and falses. So we're using mutate. Inside the mutate function is where we have the name of the new variable we want to create. And that's equal to the computation that's going to create the new information in the column. And we can just do that by testing whether petal length in inches is greater than 1.5. I tend to like to put parentheses around that to make it more clear sort of where the thing I'm testing begins and ends, but that is optional. Something to pay attention to here is that if you plan to use this column again later on, you do need to store the results back into a data frame. So here we're storing it back into the data frame of the same name, Iris. We could call it something else, like we could call it Iris2. If you were making a big change and maybe didn't want to overwrite your results just yet, in case you wanted to check what you did to make sure you didn't make a mistake. There are other ways to do this. We could use an if-else function, but that's not necessary here because all we want is trues and falses rather than something more complicated. Are there questions about problem 2C? All right. And then a question that people were looking at recently here was looking at the air quality data set and calculating the mean of ozone. So when it's saying use dplyr, that's meaning use the functions that we saw in problem 2. So we can start with our air quality data set and use the % greater than % to pipe the results into our next function. And then we'll use summarize and mean of ozone, just like we did before. The nice thing about using dplyr to take this mean is that once you've got the data frame piped in, then you can just refer to the columns by their names. You don't need to use air quality $ ozone, and you don't need to know which column number was the ozone column. But if we do that, we get NA. And that happened because the ozone data set or the air quality data set contains NAs. which if you double click on air quality in the global environment, then you can see that here. So we see that we have some NAs, some missing data. So if we go over to our help section, where you could go into Google and just type mean in our search bar, we get the documentation for this function for taking the mean. And you see that we have an argument called na.rm, which is a logical value. So that means it's either true or false, indicating whether NA or missing values should be stripped or removed before the computation proceeds. And in fact, if you look up at the top, you can see that it has na.rm equals false. That's telling you that by default, the value of this argument is false. So if you don't include na.rm, then it will have it be false, meaning it will leave the missing values in. But we want to remove the missing values. So we can put that in using na.rm equals false. In R, the logical values are all capitals. So the word false in all capitals or the word true in all capitals, not lowercase. And that, why did that not work? Oh, because I did false instead of true. Ugh. That allows us to compute the actual mean of the non-missing data. Questions about this? Other questions about this lab? All right, so this lab is due at the start of lab next week. I do encourage you to submit it earlier than that if you have it done. The way to do that is once you've answered all the questions, go ahead and knit the RMD file, double check the Word document, make sure that it doesn't have anything broken in it, and then submit your RMD file and your knitted Word document to Canvas. I would also recommend when you're shutting down R, it's going to ask you if you want to save your workspace. I recommend saying no. And the reason for that is if you save your workspace, then it'll save what's in your environment, which can create errors that are harder to detect later. Like if the next lab you're trying to work with a variable called X and you forget to put in what X should actually equal, it's going to go ahead and keep using X equal to whatever it was from the previous lab, which is going to be harder to detect than if you just said, well, X doesn't exist, then it would tell you, hey, I can't find the variable X. That would be an easier error to detect. Questions about that? So I recommend not saving your workspace when you shut down R. All right. Vivian asks, what does the na.rm mean? Removing the NA data? Exactly. So RM is short for remove. So removing the NAs before it computes the mean. And that is true because that's what the documentation for the mean function tells us, is it has an argument called na.rm. And it might even have some examples. No, it doesn't have any examples of how to use that argument down at the bottom. All right, so we have 9 minutes left. I will circulate around to answer individual questions as there's time, and I will see you tomorrow downstairs in Hibberd 228. Good job figuring it out.
If you save this, is there a way you can open it on your laptop? Would you email it to yourself or something?
Yes. Okay. If you save this and email it to yourself or save it on your H drive or whatever.
Then you can access it and change it.
Yep.
Sounds good.
If I did finish, if I didn't, I could just like send all that out to myself. Maybe go work out.
You would still need to reevaluate the code cells in order to restore the variables in the memory on your other computers.
Okay.
And actually, a fast way to do that is the downward arrow with the little green bar that's in the upper right hand corner of the code cell. There. That will run all of the code cells above the correct one. So if you just want to run everything before this point, and then I'm going to start working on this code cell. Anything I can help with?
I do have a question. The artist stuff, there's,
So. So that he.
Correct.
okay, that was it. I just wanted to make sure I had that one right.
Something as a function of something else means
Yeah.
the first something is the y, and the as a function of it, yes.
I don't want that.
Yes.
This would be really strange.
This one.
Try choosing yes.
Okay, you do the filter. so do it.
Yeah, that's progress.
No, that's less than 70.
How to install the GG formula package. Yeah, so to install the GG formula package, you're going to want to go to the console and type install.packages, and then in quotes the name of the package that you want. And then press enter, and it'll do that. That'll take a minute or two. I'm not going to redo that because I already did it this morning. And once you've done that, you only need to do that once for any installation of R. Once you've done that, then you can load the package using the library function.
Oh, it is.
So this I would recommend putting in the R Markdown document. And Vivian, a question that I just answered in person was about how to work on this R Markdown document on another computer. So if you save this document and like email it to yourself or put it in your H drive or whatever, you can reopen it in R on a different computer to work on it. But something that's helpful is you're going to want to rerun all of the code cells in order to get everything into your environment up here in the upper right-hand corner. So it's in memory to work with it. And something that's helpful for that is this run all chunks above button. So the downward arrow with the green bar. If you click on that, it will run all of the code cells above the current one. So that can be helpful if you just want to run everything up to a certain point and then start working on the next problem, your new code cell. Cool. Did you load the GG formula library in our Markdown document?
I didn't.
That would be the folder there. In that code cell, go ahead and type library GG formula. The way it works is that the R Markdown document sort of acts as a self-contained instance of R. So anything that you do in the console, when you go to knit the document, it's going to forget about it.
Oh,
So if you type library GG formula in the console, when you knit it, it's going to ignore that fact.
okay. I see. I think I have to do the other. Oh. Thank you.
Oh, and it's having issues because of the opening the help file for air quality. You can just comment out the question mark air quality line. Oh, but
I did
it went
that, but then
ahead.
it opened the Google
Great.
document anyway after. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
So not necessary. Anything else I can help with? Nice job. All right. How will the Word document look like? So when you click the knit button, it will automatically create a Word document. And you can just go ahead and submit that Word document. Any other questions, Vivian? In the R Markdown document? Yes. So I recommend running the chunks as you go. When you click the knit, it's going to run everything in order. So that way, by checking the Word document at the end, that will be a check on whether everything sort of worked together and made sense as you were running it. But I recommend running each code cell as you go to make sure that everything is making sense as you go.
Oh,
Cool, you're welcome.
thank you.
So I will see you tomorrow.
That's probably why I was teaching that pretty quickly. Like, really easy.